Hi everyone. So this is part 2B, continuing on the topic of Asperger's and humor. And before I go any further on this video, I just want to say thank you to everyone who watched my last video. And I appreciate the support. And again, I just want to say, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask. Feel free to leave a comment, and I'll try to answer as soon as I can and the best that I can. And if anyone, I didn't mention this last time, but if anyone would like to share these videos, I always post them publicly. So that way, anyone out there who has Asperger's syndrome like I do, or is anywhere on the autistic spectrum, who are watching this, that they can identify along with what I'm sharing. If anyone would like to share this video, I gladly give you permission, like they say in the military and on Star Trek, permission granted. So anyways, I just also want to give glory to God for helping me to have the confidence to do this. It's all glory and praise to Him, and it's through Christ that we can do all things, that our hope and our confidence is in Him and through Him. So anyways, to get right down into the video here, kind of picking up where I left off last time, I was doing a little recap about how at times I struggle to understand humor or use it as a natural outlet, or having a hard time coping. That is, using humor as a way to cope in life, whether as a coping mechanism or a defense mechanism in different situations. In this paragraph here, I want to mention, I had mentioned before that when I express humor, it's preferably on my terms rather than someone else dragging me into a humorous scenario or forced into something humorous. So to kind of touch on that a little, I'm just usually comfortable, when I choose to express myself through humor. That is, as I've already mentioned it, as using it on my terms. So it doesn't mean that I don't have a sense of humor at all. I think I had implied that before. It just means that I just use it when I choose to, even though it's not as much of an outlet for me as it is for many people out there. And, all of us have boundaries, and even with humor, there are some boundaries that are important to me. And people do tend to get a little too carried away or go too far with a comment or a gesture, as I've also shared before. So, we all do our best to respect one another and respect each other's boundaries. And of course, I do my best to respect everyone else and their boundaries as much as I hope that they do the same with me likewise. And, I think I've also mentioned before that most people tend to have this idea that as an adult, it instantly means that you can handle anything, that you instantly, automatically just have, thick skin and backbone with everything. And however you're approached, or whatever is said to you, or just whatsoever. And I have to beg to differ in that in some ways. There may be some others, such as myself, who struggle with, having thick skin, with having backbone, and they struggle with trying to assert themselves and trying to act on that confidence. Excuse me. And of course, asserting myself is something that I've had to work on for a while, and it's still a work in progress. Even though I believe that I'm, applying it more well these days, the older I get. And but I still, struggle with thick skin at times, because I have a heightened sensitivity, a heightened awareness. And so I may be, aware of things that many people are not always too keenly aware of. That is, that many neurotypical people especially aren't so aware of. And anyways, having said that, whenever I hear someone say right in that context, that is in the context of the other person hoping or expecting agreement, that is, they're hoping or expecting that person agrees with them. When they say right in that context, I respond jokingly with wrong. What I mean by that is that I feel like whenever somebody says right in that context, like they're always oversaying it. That's like one of the most overused, oversaid contexts in society today. And so sometimes I'll jokingly, some might not always think of it as a joke, but I'll jokingly, throw them off by saying wrong, and it may surprise them, or they may get confused by it, as if I didn't meant what I said. And so I have to explain it to them, per what I had already said about right in that context. And, some people will laugh it off, or others would just ignore it. And of course, I know it doesn't change anything. But, and of course, I had mentioned earlier, one reason is the heightened sense of awareness in my atypical brain that picks up on habits or trends that neurotypical people are not consciously aware of. And other trendy sayings, in today's society, such as photo dump, or you got this, or shout out. And I'm probably missing a couple others, but those are, some of the ones that I, very commonly hear, especially in today's society and today's generation. And to move on here, the other reason is right in that context seems to be overused so much these days that other alternatives are almost virtually obscured. And those alternatives, as I just said, I kind of make myself use. such as correct, true, don't you, won't you, or doesn't it, or are you? And even though there's also, like true, false, correct, incorrect, opposites to those. But so anyways, and it's like sometimes whenever I bring up, alternatives, I feel like, to many people these days, that's kind of like a foreign concept, if you will, when, it's not necessarily a foreign concept because, many people still use those other alternatives, I imagine, but, it's just that, right always being more dominant and at the top these days. And I don't know if I was going to say this or not, but even in churches, I hear more right than I do amen, in sermons and in other conversations and whatnot. So, anyways, moving on. There was another moment 3 years ago around June 2019 when my family and I were vacationing in Kauai. We were doing the ATV riding and zip lining at Princeville Ranch that day during the last week of our trip. When we got to the zip lining post, our guide was explaining to us how to equip and posture ourselves. After the instructions, she went on to say that if there were any of us who did not want to do the zip lining, she'd understand. But at the same time, to be prepared for being given a hard time and being teased for not going through with it. To be honest, I was going back and forth in my head at the time, deciding if I really wanted to do it. And I ended up doing it anyway, and it wasn't that bad. There was still some adrenaline, but I got through it. The point of this example, however, is some tend to use humor to motivate or coax others into overcoming an area of fear or something that they may not be comfortable with or unsure of, or even if there's second thoughts concerning, unfamiliar territory, that is. While that may work with most people, for some on the autistic spectrum, it can get overbearing. And of course, as I said before, I'm not speaking for everyone out there on the autistic spectrum. I'm only speaking for myself, but I know that, again, there are probably some like me who struggle with the same circumstances, more or less. For myself, it can cause much sensory overload and the feeling of being singled out as a laughing stock, with some taking it too far, constantly bringing it up, and never hearing the end of it. So, I was talking with my mom about this an evening ago, and of course she was assuring me that at that time, the guide was just kidding around. But, in some situations, it's like, it's hard to distinguish that. It's hard to discern that, as if, for all I know, if I didn't, go through with the zip lining, she's still, and others, who were participating would have given me a hard time about it. And, I don't know if eventually I would have had a major meltdown about it to the point to where I just would get frustrated. But, Of course that didn't happen, but just speculating this, if you will. So, just people need to keep in mind that, people who are on the autistic spectrum or who, have neurological differences in any way, if they're not comfortable with something, if they're not, being able to adapt into something that's unfamiliar, it's not always a good idea to be too pushy about it, to force them into it, if you will. I mean, maybe with time and with confidence, some will get there on their own, but even if they don't, that's fine as well. So moving on here, occasionally whenever I post on Facebook certain topics or even pictures such as food or family gatherings, some tend to respond with GIFs, GIFs, or image stickers. Even when I post something serious, someone might comment with a GIF or a sticker that may be humorous to some extent, probably to lighten up the situation. It's not that I don't enjoy a sticker or a GIF now and then. It just seems as though many get too carried away commenting with one. For me, it doesn't seem to help make it better, and I'd much rather people keep to the seriousness of the post. Like if I'm posting something that I might be struggling with at the time, whether it be something that's Asperger related or a family related issue. I know that there are some stickers that may be appropriate to the situation, that communicates caring and compassion and just being there, but if it's something that may try to be a little too exuberant or over the top in that way, for lack of a better way of putting it, I feel like it doesn't really, connect to the seriousness of the post, as I've already aforementioned. So, but it doesn't mean that I don't have anything against stickers or GIFs. So just to clarify that, I just think that, again, the seriousness of the post at the time should be honored and respected. I know many might agree out there and many might disagree, again, to some extent, and that's fine. One important reason why I struggle in coping with humor, kind of somewhat going into a psychological area here, is having been teased and bullied during my childhood and in adolescence. For some, bullying can have a psychological impact as far as coping with humor. Other children and teenagers making fun of me regarding my autistic traits, whether it was stimming, withdrawing in my own mind, being introverted, heightened interests in what I was into, that is, during my childhood. Things I've said or blurted out that may have sounded strange, unusual, or eccentric. Bullying someone, especially those with disabilities, handicaps, or neurological and neurodevelopmental differences is not the way to motivate anyone into having confidence and assertiveness. It only provokes the opposite. Bullying can cause depression, low self-esteem, severe isolation, even suicide. And I'm sure many can imagine, those who've just been so extremely overwhelmed, so anguished that they feel that they just can't go on living. And some who do well to hide the pain and put on a happy face and pretend that everything's okay, put on a mask. And some of us who just don't easily put on that mask. Many want to feel good about themselves and feel superior at the expense of putting others down, making them feel worthless, insignificant, and inferior. And in my side notes here, it's like, those of us with, neurological or physical differences, handicaps, disabilities, if you will, of course, many, and myself included, who have been called retarded, and maybe that's a word that no one really says too much these days, but I think, some people do unfortunately use that when referring to people who are just, different, especially with what I just aforementioned. And, kicking them when they're down as if they don't already feel, inferior and insignificant enough. Some just continue to ante up the insults just to, again, make themselves feel superior and feel good about themselves. And even the people who do the bullying, they may be going through circumstances in their life as well. Whether they're going through emotional or physical abuse as well, or, not feeling appreciated or understood as much as they'd like, but unfortunately taking their aggression out on people who they feel come across to them as being less confident, less assertive, less just, inferior to them and belittling them. And that's not to say that I haven't done my share of teasing other people and making other people feel belittled as well. But, I do know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of that, having a difference myself. And I'm not saying this to, get a lot of sympathy or, get people to feel sorry for me or anyone else. It's just, unfortunately, the reality of life. And, bullying in every way, is wrong. And And it's not just, of course, in schools with children and teenagers, but, even in adulthood, adults putting others down as far as success and accomplishments, and many who climb to the top of social statuses and wealth and making themselves out to be, the ones who have made it, who have succeeded in life, and belittling those in comparison to their lives. And sooner or later they find out that, for all their wealth, for all their accomplishments, they don't really have that connection with people. They don't really have that they don't really have that desire to try to connect with someone who's different. And that's unfortunate. And I'm not saying that, any person in that status of wealth and success is like that. But, that can be an unfortunate reality of it. And, I've always had been weary at the thought of whenever I would have a meltdown in front of people, just get angry and let myself loose, just venting my frustrations. That rather than people understanding where the meltdown is stemming from, what triggered it, that they only end up laughing at me, making me feel again like that laughing stock, and being mocked and teased. And I'm sure nobody would intend to do that, but there's just always that weariness, that as my mom would refer to it, that shadow boxing thought, the possibility that it could happen, though I pray and hope that it doesn't. Even when I'm in that mode of selective mutism, that is when I'm non-responsive at times, just kind of too focused in my own mind and not really interacting and just not responding to anyone, and people just right there near me, even talking about me, kind of going back to referring, me in that third person, and probably just trying to say something to see if they can get a response out of me, and not easily masking having that frustration, that sensory overload, and just trying to build up the confidence, if you will, to approach them and address it to them, and of course doing so with grace and with tact, while asserting myself in the right way, of course. So anyways, that concludes this topic on Asperger's and humor. Again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask or post a comment, and I'll do my best to respond back when I can. And again, if you'd like to share this video, again, permissions granted. This will be posted on my Facebook page as well as my YouTube channel. If there's anyone out there that still goes on YouTube. So again, thank you for your support and for your prayers, and blessings to you. Blessings to you all. Thanks again.